What if the truth you've been told your entire life wasn't the truth at all? What if one moment, one accidental discovery, had the power to unravel decades of carefully polished royal history? And what if the person who stumbled into that truth wasn't a journalist, or a rebel, or an outsider, but Prince William himself? That question sits at the heart of today's story, and it's a question that should make every viewer pause for a second and really think. How many secrets does a family, especially this family, stack away before the weight of them becomes impossible to hide? Because according to those close to palace staff, what William found inside Queen Camilla's private closet wasn't just surprising. It wasn't even just incriminating. It was something far more dangerous. It was emotional, personal, and in many ways, prophetic. And the moment William opened that unmarked box, everything he thought he understood about his mother's final years shifted under his feet like a cracking floorboard in a house built on fragile foundations. But before we dive in, ask yourself this. If you discovered your mother had written letters that were never meant to be seen, would you read them? Would you respect her privacy? Or would you risk everything to understand the truth she never got to tell you? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The reality is, when it comes to the British royal family, secrecy is as critical as oxygen. Every hallway, every room, every desk has a history. But some have a hidden history, one that never makes it into books, documentaries, or carefully crafted PR statements. And Camilla's private closet, the one she guards more fiercely than her own reputation, is one of those places. The closet didn't stand out in any obvious way. There was no extravagant lock, no sign reading restricted, no dramatic red laser beams like in a spy movie. But anyone who works inside the palace knows one simple rule. Camilla might be relaxed in public, laughing at events, smiling at engagements, cracking jokes the public doesn't hear. But that closet? That was her fortress. Staff walked past it quickly. Some avoided it entirely. And even those who cleaned the room knew better than to ask questions. So the real question becomes, what was she hiding? And why was she so afraid anyone might find it? People forget something important when telling royal stories. William is not just the heir to the throne. He's a son who lost his mother at 15, a son who watched the world dissect her life, her marriage, her pain. A son who built walls around emotional wounds he never truly healed. So imagine him on a quiet afternoon in the palace, taking a different route through Clarence House or Buckingham. Your cinematic choice later, trying to escape a stressful meeting or pick up something important. Imagine him walking down a hallway he rarely uses, noticing something off. And imagine that small, almost insignificant detail, a door slightly ajar when it's always closed. A sliver of darkness where there's usually order. Would you ignore it? Or would curiosity push you a little closer? The royal family lives under a microscope, but behind closed doors, they are experts at shielding themselves from scrutiny. That's why this story matters now, more than ever. Because in an age where every public figure is desperate to control the narrative, a discovery like this, raw, unfiltered letters written by Diana herself, threatens to blow a hole straight through the monarchy's carefully constructed image. And if these letters had remained hidden for decades, locked away in a place where only Camilla could access them, then you have to ask a question that should make anyone uncomfortable. Was she trying to protect herself? Or protect the crown? And which one mattered more to her? When William stepped into that room, it wasn't because he wanted to uncover a secret. It wasn't because he suspected anything. It was, ironically, because he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. That's what makes this entire story so compelling. The discovery happened not through investigation, but through accident. The kind of accident that rewrites family dynamics. The kind of accident that reveals motives hidden behind polite smiles. The kind of accident that exposes the one thing the royal family fears most, the unfiltered truth of Diana's voice. And let's be honest, Diana's shadow has never left this family. Her presence lingers in every major decision, every public speech, every comparison the media draws between the past and present. William feels it. Harry feels it. Charles certainly feels it. And Camilla? She feels it more than anyone, because her entire public journey, fairly or unfairly, has been defined by Diana's memory. So what would Camilla gain from keeping letters like these locked away? Was she afraid William might misunderstand something Diana wrote? Was she worried these letters contained accusations that could damage her standing? Or was she holding on to them as a way of preserving control over a narrative she was never supposed to have access to? Picture the moment William's eyes fall on the unmarked box. Dusty, aged, positioned carefully behind old garments and in used items. Not the sort of thing Camilla would ever leave lying around. Not the sort of thing anyone would expect to find unless they were searching for something else entirely. Boxes like these don't get misplaced. They get hidden. And when a box is hidden, it's usually hiding something and someone from the truth. Imagine William staring at it for a long moment. That tension between hesitation and need. The silence of the room amplifying every breath. A small part of him wondering whether it belonged to his father, or perhaps to Queen Elizabeth, or was simply some forgotten archive. But another part, an instinct he didn't want to acknowledge, pulled him closer. The same instinct that told him his mother never got to reveal everything she needed to. The same instinct that whispers in the back of his mind every time her name is mentioned, reminding him that some truths were buried with her, or buried for her. He crouches. He lifts the lid. And then he stops breathing. Inside are letters and handwriting he recognized instantly. Not because it was perfect or flowing, but because it was familiar, because it was hers. The loops, the slants, the emotional tilt of someone who wrote with her heart rather than her pen. William's pulse doubles. He reaches forward. His fingertips hover over the nearest envelope. And it hits him. The sudden emotional earthquake triggered by a memory so vivid it knocks him sideways. His mother sitting at a desk, writing something quietly while he played on the floor. Her glancing over her shoulder. Her smile soft. Her voice gentle. And suddenly, he's not standing in Camilla's closet anymore. He's standing in the 1990s again. But here's the contradiction that adds fire to this entire story. If Diana wrote these letters, why were they in Camilla's possession? Why would Charles's current wife have such private documents belonging to his former wife? Letters that were never meant to be seen? And why would they be hidden so deliberately that only a mistake could reveal them? That's not normal. That's not coincidence. That's something else entirely. Something darker. Something deliberate. And the moment William registers that, everything inside him shifts. But here's where the emotional stakes get even sharper. William knows he shouldn't read them. These are his mother's private thoughts. Her private fears. Her private words. And yet he also knows that Diana often wrote things she couldn't say to anyone directly. Her letters were her safe place. Her truth. And if she left something behind, especially something hidden, then maybe it wasn't meant to stay buried forever. Maybe it was meant for him. Maybe he was supposed to find it. Inside the box are multiple envelopes. Some addressed. Some not. Some sealed. Some gently folded with ribbons that have faded with time. The topmost envelope holds a detail that stops him cold. Its addressee. And that single detail is what cracks open the entire story, because it's not addressed to him, and it's not addressed to Charles. It's addressed to someone else entirely. Someone he never expected. Someone who makes his stomach drop. Now ask yourself, if you were standing in that room, holding your mother's hidden letter addressed to someone you didn't expect, with Camilla's footsteps echoing somewhere nearby, what would you do? Would you open it? Would you confront Camilla? Would you walk away? Or would you dig deeper, knowing full well that once you read what's inside, there's no going back? Because William made a choice in that moment, one that would alter every relationship around him. And as he stared down at that first letter and saw who it was written for, he realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a box of letters. It was a box of warnings. And one letter in particular would shake him to his core. But what happened next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the room you thought you'd safely slipped into suddenly wasn't so safe anymore? What if the first clue, the first tremor of something bigger, came not from the letter in your hand, but from the nagging sensation that you were no longer alone? That is exactly where we pick up. Right at the threshold of discovery, right at the moment Prince William's pulse shifted from curiosity to dread. Because the instant he lifted that first envelope, the one addressed to someone he never expected, the atmosphere inside Camilla's private room changed. The walls seemed to tighten. The air grew heavier. Silence became more pronounced, like the room itself was holding its breath. And here's the question you need to ask yourself. Why did it feel like someone, something, did not want him reading what came next? Why was the door to Camilla's closet locked so aggressively in the first place? That's where our story dives in. Because Chapter 1 doesn't just begin with a locked door, it begins with the very reason that door was locked at all. So let me ask you directly. When someone goes out of their way to hide a door, reinforce it, or keep it tightly shut at all times, what's the first thought that crosses your mind? Is it privacy? Is it protection? Or is it fear? And more importantly, fear of what? Prince William had walked past that door countless times before. It was part of Camilla's private suite, tucked behind an ornate white corridor with old portraits, gilded mirrors, and the kind of carpets that silence footsteps. The palace is full of these kinds of hallways, places where time feels sticky, where the past lingers like perfume, and where every painting seems to follow you with its eyes. But on this particular day, William wasn't strolling. He was searching for something else, documents Charles had asked him to retrieve. Something simple, something procedural, something that would take 5 minutes on any normal day. But on this day, the manila folder was missing from the office where it should have been, and a staff member mentioned, almost timidly, that Camilla had been using the room down the corridor for her private paperwork. It sounded off. Why would she use that room? Why now? Why suddenly? William didn't want to overthink it. Maybe she just liked the lighting. Maybe she found the room quieter. Maybe it was nothing. But the moment he turned the corner, something felt wrong. The door, Camilla's door, wasn't shut all the way. Not locked. Not secured. Not hidden. Just slightly ajar, like a secret peeking out. And tell me honestly, if you saw a forbidden door cracked open, would you walk past it? Or would something tug at your instincts? Something telling you that a mistake had been made. A slip. A glitch in someone's careful routine. William paused. He stared at the door. He debated. This was Camilla's private space. The one place in the entire palace she made absolutely clear she didn't want disturbed. Not by staff. Not by visitors. Not even by Charles, according to whispers from those closest to the couple. And privacy is one thing, but secrecy? Secrecy is something else entirely. He gently pushed it open. The hinges gave a soft moan, like they hadn't been used in years. He stepped into a room that felt strangely different from the rest of the palace. Not cold, not sterile, warmer, lived in, touched by a presence that tried very hard to remain invisible. And then he saw it. The closet door, reinforced, padlocked, slightly scuffed as if it had been opened and closed hundreds, maybe thousands of times. William moved closer. The air shifted again. And perhaps the most unsettling detail was that the closet didn't match the room's decor. It was newer, stronger, modern, completely out of place. Ask yourself, why is a closet built like a vault? This is where the story deepens, because William didn't immediately open it. He hovered. He hesitated. And in that hesitation, memories surged. Camilla's odd behavior during family gatherings, the way she always redirected conversations about the past, the unusual tension anytime Diana's name came up, even indirectly. Were these coincidences? Or were they signs of something larger simmering beneath the surface? His hand moved toward the lock. It wasn't a complicated one, no biometric scanner, no digital keypad, just a simple keyhole. But simple things often hide complicated secrets. Then William noticed something odd in the corner of the room. A tray on the small side table. 2 half-empty cups of tea. One stirred, one untouched, which meant someone else had been there recently. Someone with Camilla. Someone who left quickly. He looked around. His heartbeat increased. That feeling of being watched, the one you can't shake, crept up his spine. But there was no time to freeze. No time to reconsider. Because if this room was compromised, if someone was planning to return, then this moment, this sliver of opportunity, might be the only chance he would ever get to see what was inside that fortified closet. He checked the drawers. Neat. Organized. Too organized. Camilla wasn't known for her tidiness. Staff often teased gently behind her back about her tendency to leave things scattered. But this was curated. Carefully arranged. Almost staged. He reached the small jewelry dish on the dresser. At first, it looked like a standard assortment. Rings, a brooch, a small bottle of perfume. But beneath it a key. Not decorative. Not ornate. A simple metal key with the slightest tarnish on the edge, as if handled often. It had to be for the closet. William stared at it. His throat tightened. Because picking it up wasn't just a physical action, it was a symbolic one. To open that door meant crossing a line between the past and the present, between what he was allowed to know and what he wasn't supposed to see, between being a son and being a future king. But sometimes curiosity isn't a choice. It's a compulsion. He lifted the key. It was heavier than he expected, and the moment he touched it, he felt it. The emotional current running through the room, the one no one talks about. The unspoken rivalry between the ghost of Diana and the reality of Camilla. Two women linked by history, fate, tragedy, and a man who still struggles to reconcile the two halves of his life. The key slid into the lock smoothly. Too smoothly. It clicked open with a soft, chilling snap. And this is the part where you need to really picture the scene. Because the moment William pulled the door, something fell out. Not something dramatic like a stack of papers or a jewelry box. Something small. Something unexpected. A photograph. A single photograph that fluttered to the floor like a whispered confession. And when he picked it up, William froze. Because the photograph wasn't of Camilla. It wasn't of Charles. It wasn't of the Queen or the boys as children, or even one of those dusty historical portraits. It was of Diana. Not the glamorous Diana. Not the photographed Diana. Not the carefully curated Diana the world remembers. It was a candid shot. Her sitting alone at a desk, writing something, looking worried. Intense. Determined. A photograph taken without her knowing. A photograph that should not exist. A photograph hidden in Camilla's private closet. And that's when William knew. This closet wasn't about storage. It was about surveillance. Observation. Control. Suddenly, everything inside him shifted from uncertainty to alarm. He grabbed the photograph. His hands trembled. And when he looked inside the closet, deeper than before, he saw the unmarked box. The same box that would change everything. The same box that held the letters no one was supposed to read. But before he reached for it, a sound sliced through the silence. A floorboard. A shuffle. A soft inhale from somewhere outside the room. Someone was coming. And the one question that slammed through William's mind, the question I'm going to leave you with before we move forward, is this. If the person approaching that door knew what William was about to discover, were they coming to stop him? Or were they coming to make sure he couldn't walk away? What happened next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do if the first thing you saw inside a forbidden box wasn't just a letter, but evidence that someone had been watching your mother without her knowledge? That's where we left off. William standing alone, adrenaline surging, heartbeat thudding in his ears, holding a candid photo of Diana that no one should have had access to. And here's the part that should make you lean in a little closer. The moment he picked up that photograph, he realized something terrifying. If a picture like this existed, what else had Camilla been keeping? What else had been hidden away? And more importantly, who was the intended audience for these images and letters? Because someone didn't keep them for nostalgia. They kept them for leverage. Now, Chapter 2 begins not with an explosion of events, but with a quiet, paralyzing realization. The box wasn't the only thing in the closet that spelled danger. It was the placement. The dusty outline around it suggested it had sat there untouched for years, except for the faintest smear at the edge of the lid, a sign that someone had moved it recently. That detail alone is enough to make anyone's stomach drop. Why move a box unless you need something from it? And why put it back unless you want the world to forget it ever existed? Before William could even process that, the footsteps outside grew louder. Slow, cautious, almost hesitant. As if the person approaching wasn't sure whether they were supposed to be there, or worse, as if they suspected someone else already was. William's breath tightened. The photograph trembled slightly between his fingers. The box sat waiting, like a heartbeat inside the darkness. Then the footsteps paused. Silence. A breath. A faint shift of weight. And then nothing. It was like the person outside the room was listening. Listening for movement. Listening for a mistake. Listening for him. The tension was so thick you could slice it. William froze completely. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't dare glance toward the door. He waited. 1 second. 2. 3. And finally, soft, almost feather-like, the footsteps drifted away. Was it Camilla? Was it a staff member? Was it someone Charles sent? Or someone who knew about the box and was terrified someone else might find it? At this point, everything was possible. That's what makes this moment so crucial. Because in the palace, footsteps aren't just footsteps. They're signals, warnings, patterns. You can tell who someone is by the rhythm of their walk. But William couldn't place this one, and that unsettled him more than anything. He exhaled, turned back toward the open closet, and forced himself to focus. The box. The unmarked, dust-coated, slightly aged box sitting quietly as if it had been waiting for him for decades. With one hand, he gently slid it forward. The cardboard was stiff but delicate, like something old enough to be fragile but important enough to be handled with care. The lid didn't lift easily. It was snug, almost intentionally snug, as if someone wanted to ensure it stayed closed unless opened with purpose. He lifted it slowly. The smell hit him first. Old paper, faded perfume, and something else, something metallic, like ink. The kind of scent you only smell on letters written by fountain pens from another era. He swallowed hard. He wasn't prepared for this. No one would be. Inside the box, several envelopes lay in neat stacks, some tied with ribbon, some loose, some sealed, some opened. It was a graveyard of secrets, a graveyard of emotions Diana never intended to expose to the world. But one envelope stood out immediately, not because of its placement, but because of the handwriting. Diana's handwriting. Soft, looping, emotional. The kind of handwriting that carried her voice inside it even decades later. William's throat tightened, his chest constricted. The photograph in his other hand now felt heavier, symbolic. He set it down gently and reached for the first envelope. The name on it made his eyes widen. Not his, not Charles, not Harry, not Camilla. It was addressed to someone unexpected, someone connected to Diana's world, but not in a way he had ever imagined she would write privately to. Who was it? A confidant? A protector? A friend? A threat? Or someone who held a truth she could only trust to paper? William's hand shook as he slid a finger beneath the envelope's flap. But something stopped him. Not doubt, not fear, not guilt. A detail, a tiny, barely noticeable detail. The paper had been opened before. He studied the flap. It had been resealed. Carefully, delicately, but unmistakably resealed. And that was the moment the emotional beat hit him like a punch. Someone else had already read this letter. Someone had broken into Diana's private words. Someone had violated her emotional sanctuary. Someone had taken something sacred and then put it back. Why? To hide something? To study something? To control something? Or to weaponize something? He felt the weight of injustice hit him like a tidal wave. Diana had been betrayed in life, and apparently, she had been betrayed in death too. He opened the letter slowly. Inside was not a long message, not a rambling confession. Just a few paragraphs. But each one felt heavy. Each one felt carved out of truth. Each one felt like a piece of a larger mystery. Not enough to explain everything, but enough to hint that the story was far more complicated than the public ever knew. He read the first few lines. His hands began to tremble. This wasn't just an emotional letter. It was a warning to the recipient, a warning about someone, a warning about something Diana believed was coming. The contradiction cut through him. If Diana had been this afraid, why hadn't anyone protected her? Why had no one acted? Or had they? And what if they acted in the wrong way? Too late, or too quietly to matter? But before he could read further, something deeper in the box caught his eye. A second envelope. Thicker, heavier, bound with a nearly faded ribbon. The handwriting on this one wasn't addressed to anyone. Just 3 words. For the truth. William's pulse spiked. What truth? Her truth? The palace's truth? The truth about her marriage? The truth about her accident? The truth about Camilla? His mind raced in every direction. And maybe that's exactly why Diana wrote the letters in the first place. To force someone, someday, to stop and ask these questions. To confront the contradictions no one dared face. He reached for the second envelope. But as his fingertips brushed it, something else slid into view. A folded sheet of paper. Not in Diana's handwriting. Not addressed. Not signed. Just a sheet covered in typed text. And the header made William's blood run cold. It wasn't a letter. It was a palace memo. A memo about Diana. A memo dated months before her separation. A memo that referenced conversations, meetings, and suggestions about how to manage public perception. Manage. Public. Perception. Those 3 words alone changed the tone of everything in the room. Because we all know what management can become when power is involved. And we all know what the royal family is capable of when protecting its legacy. William's chest tightened. He had to sit down. He needed air. He needed clarity. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not after seeing that. He turned back to the letter addressed to the unknown recipient. And as he finally unfolded it, finally prepared himself to hear Diana's unfiltered voice after all these years, something else at the bottom of the box caught his attention. Another letter. This one still sealed. Still untouched. Still pristine. Addressed to someone he never expected. Someone whose involvement changed everything. Someone who made his breath catch in his throat. Because this final, untouched letter, this pristine envelope, this message frozen in time, was addressed to him, Prince William, the letter he never knew existed, the letter he was never supposed to see. And as he stared at it, frozen in disbelief, the sound returned. The footsteps. They were back. Closer. Faster. And this time, they didn't stop. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the warning your mother left behind wasn't meant to protect someone else, but was meant to protect you? That's the question that detonates at the start of this chapter. Because when William sits there, knees locked, breath unsteady, heart in a freefall, holding a letter someone had already read before he ever got to it, there's a moment where his world fractures. Right there in Camilla's private room. Right there inside a closet built like a vault. Right there at the edge of a secret that Diana tried to whisper through ink long before she ever lost her voice. So let's step into Chapter 3, the warning. And the opening question you need to ask yourself is this. What kind of warning would a mother leave behind if she believed no one in the system meant to protect her actually would? What kind of truth did Diana sense, feel, fear? So deeply that she needed to write it down because she couldn't trust anyone to listen? And why did this warning end up in a place so hidden, so shielded, so deliberately sealed away, that even her own son was never meant to find it? William stares at the envelope. His pulse is a steady throb against his temples. Time feels strange, almost slower, almost heavier. The rest of the room dissolves into background noise. The footsteps outside vanish. All he sees is the letter, the resealed flap, the fingerprints of intrusion. The evidence of a betrayal that happened long before this moment. Because you don't reseal something unless you want to use it later. And you don't hide something in a fortified closet unless you don't want anyone else to know it ever existed. He unfolds the letter. The paper crackles. Old, delicate, but unmistakably real. Handwritten in long, emotional strokes. Not frantic. Not rushed. Focused. Determined. The way someone writes when they know what they're saying could cost them everything. Charles, the first line begins. William feels his chest tighten. This was the first shock. The letter wasn't addressed to a confidant. Not a friend. Not a reporter. Not a lawyer. But to Charles. And not the Charles the world sees. The polished king-to-be. The diplomat. The environmental figurehead. No. This was written to the Charles behind palace doors. The one who lived in two worlds. The one the public admired. And the one Diana navigated like a maze built with traps. The letter begins calmly, almost gently. Then it shifts. Diana writes about the changing nature of our relationship. She writes about fears that are hard to articulate inside walls that listen. She writes about feeling watched, controlled, steered. She writes about influences around you who do not wish me well. Influences. Plural. Her words aren't vague. They're precise in their vagueness, if that makes sense. She avoids names, but draws shapes around them. She describes conversations she overheard. The sudden coldness of certain staff members. The meetings she wasn't told about. The decisions made on her behalf without her consent. Then comes the warning. The line that makes William's stomach freefall. I believe moves are being made to push me aside in ways that will not appear accidental. Read that again. Not appear accidental. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't dramatics. It wasn't the exaggerated fantasy critics tried to paint her with. It was the truth as she felt it. The truth as she saw it happening around her. And when a woman known the world over for her emotional intelligence and intuition writes a sentence like that, you pay attention. William blinks. The words blur. He rereads them. His pulse spikes. This is his mother speaking across time. Speaking to a future she didn't live to see. Speaking through paper because she couldn't speak aloud. And now he's hearing a truth she feared would be buried with her. But the next lines shift tone entirely. She speaks of Camilla. Not with rage. Not with bitterness. With clarity. I know she has become part of your world again, Diana writes. I know the consequences of this will fall on me. I do not fear her. I fear what others may do to protect her. This is where everything inside William snaps. Because Diana never saw Camilla as the enemy. It was always bigger than that. It wasn't the affair alone. It wasn't just heartbreak. It wasn't even jealousy. It was the machinery around the monarchy. The protectors, the advisors, the handlers, the ones who manage perception, the ones who manage consequences, the ones who manage threats. Diana was never afraid of Camilla. She was afraid of what people might do for Camilla, for Charles, for the monarchy, for themselves. And that's when the middle of the letter hits William harder than anything else so far. Diana writes, "There are plans forming. I am outside them. That is why I am writing this now." Plans. What plans? William grips the paper until the edges crinkle. His mind spirals. What was Diana referring to? A strategy to diminish her? To distance her from the family? To turn public opinion against her? Or something deeper? Something more sinister? And why did Charles never respond? Or did he? And where was that letter? Then comes the part that makes William's breath stop completely. If anything happens to me, look first at those whose power benefits most. A sentence like that is not a passing thought. It is an accusation. It is a fear. It is a prophecy. And it is written, in Diana's own handwriting, inside Camilla's closet. William sits back, the letter trembling. His throat tightens. His vision swims. Because suddenly, this isn't just about a forgotten box. This isn't about an oversight or a misplaced keepsake. This is about intent. Someone kept this letter. Someone read it. Someone resealed it. Someone hid it. And someone meant to control who would ever see it. The letter closes with an emotional gut punch. Protect the boys. They will need someone to shield them from the aftermath of truths too dangerous to speak. William feels a heaviness settle over him. A grief renewed. A responsibility he thought he already understood. But now sees differently. Because Diana wasn't just protecting her sons from the press. She was protecting them from the palace. But there's one more paragraph. One more twist. One that changes everything. Diana writes, "The person this concerns most is not you and not me. You know who." Who? William whispers it aloud. Who? The letter offers no clarification. Just a final, chilling line. This danger will not end. William folds the letter slowly, hands trembling. But then his eyes drift back to the box. Because beneath the first letter, beneath the warnings, beneath the revelations about palace forces, lies another envelope. This one addressed not to Charles, not to Camilla, not to the palace, but to Camilla. And that's when William's heartbeat slams into high gear. Because this letter, the one addressed directly to the woman who would one day become queen consort. Written before Diana's death, written during one of the most turbulent periods of her life, wasn't just a message. It was confrontation in ink. A confrontation Camilla never expected William to see. And as he reaches for it, with footsteps still echoing faintly somewhere in the hallway, he realizes that what Diana wrote to Camilla might explain why this entire box was hidden. Because this letter wasn't a warning. It was a verdict. And what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What if the person your mother feared was the same person who had been quietly living just steps away from you for decades? That's the explosive question hanging in the air as we open Chapter 4. Because the moment William's fingers brushed the second envelope, the one addressed to Camilla, the emotional temperature in the room shifted again. This wasn't just another letter. This wasn't a diary page. This wasn't a vague warning. This was Diana, in her own words, writing directly to the woman whose existence had shaped, strained, and in many ways shattered the course of her marriage. And the question you need to ask yourself right now is simple. What does a woman like Diana write to the woman she believes the entire monarchy is bending itself to protect? The envelope felt heavier than the first, even though the paper inside couldn't have weighed more than a few grams. But emotional weight is a different kind of gravity. William felt it instantly. The name written on the front wasn't casual. It wasn't rushed. Diana had written Camilla with a steady hand. No dramatic flourishes. No jagged strokes. Not hatred. Not sarcasm. Not panic. Just truth. A truth she hadn't been able to say out loud. A truth she wasn't allowed to address publicly. A truth she knew could never be spoken without consequences. William hesitated. You would have too. Imagine holding a letter from your mother. addressed to the woman who replaced her. A woman who lived through the scandal that defined your childhood. A woman who had been the catalyst for some of the darkest moments in your family. Would you read it? Could you read it? Or would guilt stop you? But William wasn't operating from guilt. He was operating from necessity. Because the letters weren't in Camilla's closet by accident. Someone had kept them. Someone had hidden them. Someone had chosen not to destroy them, but to stash them away in a place only they could access. And that meant the content inside wasn't harmless. It wasn't sentimental. It wasn't benign. It was explosive. He slid the flap open. The paper inside was slightly crinkled, as if it had been read, and read often. This was no sealed time capsule. Someone had been going through this more than once. And that realization alone made William's stomach twist. What could Camilla possibly need to read again and again? He unfolded the letter. The first line was not what he expected. Camilla, I am writing this not out of anger, but because truth is the only thing I have left. No bitterness, no melodrama, no accusation, just stark honesty. The kind of honesty Diana was known for, brutal, vulnerable, and fearless all at once. She continued, I know where things stand between us. I know what has happened. And I know what cannot be undone. William inhaled sharply. There it was. The truth. The acknowledgement. The reality everyone had whispered about, but rarely heard articulated from Diana's own voice. But then the tone shifted. I do not fear you. I fear the forces that surround you. That line. That one line. William's pulse jumped. Diana didn't see Camilla as the mastermind. She saw her as a symbol. A catalyst. A justification used by others to move pieces on a chessboard she couldn't control. And whether you believe Diana was right or wrong, one thing has always been undeniable. She understood the palace machinery better than anyone gave her credit for. She wrote, They have chosen you, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. William frowned. What did that mean? Chosen for what? Chosen by whom? And why? Diana went deeper. If the public saw what I have seen, if they heard what I have heard, their faith in this institution would collapse overnight. A sentence like that doesn't exist without reason. It doesn't come out of nowhere. Diana wasn't reckless with her words when she committed them to paper. She was strategic. She was intentional. And she was painfully aware of the eyes and ears that monitored her daily life. Then came the line that made William's chest tighten until he could barely breathe. You will benefit from things set in motion long before this letter. I hope you understand the cost. Not might, not could, not may someday. Will. You will benefit from things set in motion. What things? Who set them in motion? Why? At this point, William's hands trembled so violently he had to rest the letter on his knee to keep reading. The reality of what he was holding. The raw truth of Diana addressing the woman who would eventually become Queen Camilla was almost too much to process. Diana continued writing about her sons. My boys are young. They do not see the way the world is shifting around them. But they will. And when they do, they will ask questions you may not be prepared to answer. This was directed at Camilla. Imagine being the recipient of that line. Imagine being the one Diana warned. The letter deepened. One day, their innocence will end. And when it does, the truth will find them. William swallowed hard. Because that day had come. Right here. Right now. Inside Camilla's closet. Then came the emotional blow, one Diana wrote not out of fear, but out of acceptance. I do not hate you. It is the circumstances around you that frighten me. Imagine the complexity of that line. Imagine the grace in that line. Imagine the pain behind that line. And imagine hiding such a letter for decades. Then, at the bottom of the page, one final paragraph tore through William like a blade. I hope you will show kindness to my boys, even if you cannot show it to me. They will need it. They will need protection from the fallout of choices neither you nor I made alone. William's vision blurred. Because Diana knew. She knew something was coming. She knew she didn't have control. She knew the machine was bigger than her. She knew storms were forming around her family. She knew the future would test her sons. And she hoped, naively or prophetically, that Camilla might play a gentler role than the world expected. But there was one more thing. A detail William hadn't seen. A detail so faint that at first he didn't notice it. A second sheet, folded behind the first. Same handwriting, same style. But this wasn't addressed to Camilla. It was addressed to the one watching. What does that mean? Who was watching? Was it a warning to the palace? A message to the person she believed was monitoring her? Or something else entirely? William's heart clamped tight, because the moment he opened that second sheet, the footsteps outside the room stopped. Right in front of the door, a shadow slipped across the crack beneath it. Someone was standing there, listening, watching, waiting. And that's when William realized this letter wasn't just meant for Camilla. It was meant for whoever was standing outside that door. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the truth your mother tried to hide was being monitored by someone standing on the other side of the door right now? That chilling realization is what rips open chapter 5. Because as William sits there, letters trembling in his grip, breath shallow, mind racing, the shadow beneath the doorway isn't just a detail. It's a threat, a living, breathing reminder that secrets buried inside a palace never stay buried alone. Someone always guards them, someone always watches, and someone always listens. So here's the question I want you to hold on to as we step into this chapter. What does a son do when the words his mother left behind, words she wrote in desperation, fear, hope, and painful clarity, are sitting in his hands for the very first time, while someone who should never see them is waiting right outside the door? William didn't move. He didn't speak. He barely breathed. Because the second sheet from Diana's letter, the one addressed to the one watching, wasn't just symbolism. Diana wasn't speaking metaphorically. She wasn't speaking poetically. She was speaking to someone. To the very kind of person who stood silently outside Camilla's private room at that exact moment. William stared at the folded paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was hers. He unfolded it slowly, cautiously, as if the paper itself might detonate. The first line was a punch to the ribs. I know you are reading this. A sentence that shouldn't exist. A sentence that should never appear in a letter hidden in a box. A sentence that confirms Diana knew someone was monitoring her correspondence. But the next line made William's blood run cold. And I know why. He swallowed. His mouth was dry. The shadow outside the door didn't move, didn't retreat, didn't advance. It simply waited, almost expectantly. Diana's letter continued. You believe you are protecting something sacred. You believe loyalty requires you to keep truths hidden from the world. But the truth has a way of finding the people it belongs to. William's chest constricted. Diana wasn't writing to Charles. She wasn't writing to Camilla. She wasn't writing to a confidant. She was writing to someone inside the palace system. Someone who watched her, monitored her, read her letters, tracked her movements, and reported her fears to people who weren't supposed to hear them. Was this a staff member? A senior courtier? Someone from Charles's team? Someone from the security sector? Someone loyal to Camilla? Or someone loyal to the monarchy itself? The possibilities spiraled into a web of political tension William didn't have the space to unpack. Not with that shadow still blocking the only exit. Diana continued. You may hide my words, but you cannot erase the intent behind them. One day, the right person will find this. And when they do, the truth will come to light. William's hands tightened around the page. He was the right person. He was here. Now, just like she wrote. But the next paragraph was the one that shook him to his core. I fear what will be done in the name of protecting an image. I fear what roles will be rewritten. I fear what will be taken from my boys. And I fear the silence you will impose on them. Silence. That word echoed through William's mind. Silence had been a defining force in his life. Silence around Diana. Silence around the marriage. Silence around the divorce. Silence around her death. Silence around the aftermath. Silence around the motives. Silence around the blame. The palace didn't speak. They silenced. Then, the letter took a darker turn. You will justify what you do by saying the monarchy must survive. But at what cost? And at whose expense? A breath trembled out of William. Diana's words weren't paranoid scribbles. They weren't emotional ramblings. They were deliberate, sharp, intuitive. She had seen something, understood something, felt something, long before anyone else did. And she feared the fallout. He continued scanning, his eyes racing across ink that burned into his memory. I hope you understand that when you hide this letter, you are hiding it not from Charles, not from Camilla, but from the very people who deserve it most. Then the final line of the page. You cannot bury a warning forever. William's breath hitched. The shadow under the door shifted. A creak. A barely audible inhale. A soft step. someone adjusting their weight, preparing. And that's when he realized he didn't have a choice anymore. He had to see the next letter. The one with his own name on it. The one Diana addressed directly to him. The one that had remained untouched, untampered with, unread. Because somehow, some way, whoever hid these letters never dared open the one addressed to William. Was it respect? Fear? A specific instruction? Or something more chilling? Something meant to be revealed only under certain circumstances? He lifted the envelope with his name on it. It felt heavier than all the others combined. He could feel his pulse through the paper. He opened it. The first line shattered him. My darling William, if you are reading this, then my fears have found you. He blinked rapidly, fighting the sting in his eyes, his throat tightening. Diana had written this knowing he might read it after her death. She had written it knowing the palace might hide it. She had written it knowing the forces around her were too powerful to challenge directly. She wrote it for him, not as a warning for Charles, not as a plea to Camilla, not as a message to the palace watcher, but for him, her son. The next line, I want you to remember who you are, not who others tell you to be. A gut punch, a life lesson, a mother speaking across decades. Then, you will grow up surrounded by expectations and demands. You will feel pressure to pretend. Do not let fear make your choices. William swallowed hard. His mother knew him better than anyone else ever had. She knew he would struggle. She knew he would bury emotions to survive. She knew he would be torn between duty and truth. She continued, you will be told to stay silent. You will be told to keep the peace. You will be told that questioning the system is disloyal. But remember, loyalty without honesty is not loyalty at all. His breath faltered. Then came the line that would linger in him forever. I loved you long before they knew your name. Never forget that. The room blurred. But the next paragraph snapped everything back into brutal clarity. If something happens to me, do not trust the first story you hear. That sentence alone would shake the monarchy, if ever spoken aloud. Because it implies what millions have speculated for decades. Because it implies that Diana herself didn't believe her future was safe. Because it implies she suspected certain narratives were crafted, not discovered. Then came the final warning. Ask questions. Protect your brother. And be careful whom you let near your truth. William's breath is ragged now, his hand clutching the page so tight it crumples. He rereads one line. As if searching for meaning, he isn't sure he's ready to understand. Be careful whom you let near your truth. Outside the door, the shadow moves again. This time, the door handle twitches. Once, twice. Someone is trying to test whether the door is locked. And William suddenly realizes. They don't just want to know if someone is inside. They want to know if he's inside. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the truth your mother feared wasn't written in full sentences, but in fragments? What if the most terrifying part of her message wasn't in the letters she carefully sealed, but in the torn piece of her diary she ripped out in desperation? That's exactly where Chapter 6 begins. Right at the moment William's emotional world is collapsing, the door handle is twitching, and something half hidden beneath the letters flashes like a buried alarm begging to be uncovered. He sees it only because the box shifts slightly in his hands. A small, folded scrap of cream-colored paper, thicker than the rest, slides forward. Its edges are jagged, uneven, ripped by hand. Not cut, not trimmed, torn. As if Diana didn't have time, or didn't want someone to know she removed it. As if she pulled it out quickly, too quickly, and stuffed it away before anyone could notice. William freezes. His mother's diary was sacred, personal, emotional. It was the one place where she could finally speak without being heard, watched, judged, or documented. But the palace knew she kept diaries. Everyone knew. And after her death, those diaries became some of the most contested artifacts in modern royal history. A few pages surfaced in documentaries. Some were locked away. Others vanished altogether, either lost, archived, or intentionally destroyed. So how did this page, this torn fragment, end up here? Inside Camilla's private closet. Inside a box Diana's sons never knew existed. Inside a place intended to erase the truth, not preserve it. William lifts the scrap with trembling fingers. It's small, but not insignificant. The handwriting is unmistakable. Diana's slanted cursive, emotional and pressured. Ink that looks rushed, darker than usual. almost as if she pressed harder in fear or urgency. At the top of the page, one word stands alone. Meeting. Just that. Like a headline scribbled in panic. Then beneath it, a date. A date that makes William's stomach twist violently. The diary page is dated mere weeks before her death. His throat tightens. The air in the room feels thinner, harsher, like it's fighting him. He forces himself to read the next line. Not safe. Something wrong. His breath catches. He closes his eyes for a moment. Just a moment, to steady himself. Because these aren't vague reflections or emotional musings. These are the kinds of notes someone takes when they're documenting something dangerous. Something they don't feel safe saying out loud. Something they need to remember, or prove, or pass on if they can't say it themselves. He continues reading. They know. They watch. Can't trust call. Can't trust car. Car. That word hits him like a blow to the chest. Because Diana's final moments were in a car. He shakes his head. His jaw clenches. He doesn't want to think about that. He doesn't want to let the implications in. He forces himself to stay present, stay anchored, stay focused. He reads the next line. He said it's for my protection, but I know what protection feels like. This is not protection. William goes cold. He said, who is he? A staff member? A senior aide? A private secretary? A driver? A police liaison? A member of Charles's team? Or someone higher up? Diana didn't use names. She rarely did in writing. She protected people, protected herself. But sometimes the avoidance of a name is more damning than naming the person outright. Because anonymity means the threat wasn't one person. It was a system. William inhales shakily and keeps reading. Camilla becoming central. Meetings about public perception. Decisions being made without me. His heart pounds. Central. Meetings. Decisions. Diana knew things were shifting. Diana knew Camilla was part of those shifts. Diana knew she was being pushed out, repositioned, repackaged. But the next line shakes him harder than all the others. Someone warned me quietly that there are plans. Plans I'm not supposed to know. Plans. Again. That word appears in multiple letters now. Plans forming. Plans set in motion. Plans being discussed. Plans for public narrative. Plans to push me aside. Diana wasn't paranoid. She was observant. She was intuitive. She was too close to the truth. And that made her dangerous. William turns the page over, his fingers shaking so badly the edges flutter. There's writing on the back too, scribbled hastily, angled downward as if Diana wrote in a rush while looking over her shoulder. I fear the car. I fear the tunnel. William's blood turns to ice. Because those words exist before Paris. Before the crash. Before the tragedy that changed everything. He stares. He rereads. His chest constricts. His breath collapses. How could she have written this? How could she have feared something so specific? Why did she feel unsafe in vehicles? What did she know? What did she experience? What did someone say to her? But the page goes darker still. They will say it is an accident. They always say it is an accident. His pulse slams into overdrive. His hands tremble so hard the paper flickers. Diana predicted the narrative. She predicted the explanation. She predicted the silence. She predicted her own fate. And now William, her son. The boy who held her hand at public events. The boy who stood behind her casket. The boy who grew up shielded by polished narratives. Was reading her fears in a room belonging to the woman the world blamed for her misery. This wasn't just emotional. This was catastrophic. But there's more. Near the bottom corner, Diana scribbled something that looked like a name, or half of one. It smudged, blurred, as if Diana began writing a name but stopped abruptly. Or someone smudged it while handling the page. Cam. Not fully written, but enough. Enough to make the implication blistering. Did she mean Camilla? Cameron? Campbell? A code name? A hint? Or did she stop herself because naming someone was too dangerous? William stares at it. His mind spirals. He presses the page to his knee, steadying himself because the room feels like it's tilting. But then something jolts him back to the present. A sound. Not the door. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A vibration. A light. Soft. Blue. Blinking in the shadows of the closet. William turns. His stomach plummets. A surveillance device. Small. Modern. Active. A recording light blinking faintly in the darkness. Someone was monitoring this room. Someone had been monitoring it for a long time. Someone knew the box existed. Someone knew the letters were here. Someone might have known William was inside the room right this moment. He lunges forward, grabs the device, and inspects it. It's not palace-issued. It's too discreet, too private, too deliberate. He hears something outside the door, a low murmur. 2 voices this time, whispering. He freezes. They know someone is inside. They know someone opened the closet. They know someone found the letters. His heart rages in his chest as he locks his gaze back on the torn diary page. The final line, scrawled sideways near the ripped edge, pulses like a final warning from beyond the grave. It's closer than they think. William's breath collapses. A cold sweat beads at his neck. He grabs the diary page. He grabs the letters. He grabs the box. The door handle turns. Slowly, deliberately. He has seconds, maybe less. His mind races. Escape? Confrontation? Hide? Run? He can't think. He can only act. The handle clicks. The door begins to open. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the moment you thought you were finally uncovering the truth was the exact moment someone else decided you had gone too far? That's where we pick up, right at the razor-thin edge between discovery and danger. Because when the door handle clicked and began to turn, William wasn't standing in Camilla's private room as a prince, as a future king, or even as a member of the royal family. In that instant, he was simply a son holding the last words of his dead mother. Caught in a place he should never have been, reading things he was never meant to see, while someone outside the door prepared to walk in and catch him in the act. And the terrifying part is this. He didn't know if the person entering was coming in quietly or coming in to stop him. The door creaked open a few inches, not enough for someone to step in, but enough for a presence to slip into the room like cold air. William reacted instantly. He grabbed the box. He grabbed the torn diary page. He grabbed the letters, and without thinking, without planning, without analyzing, he pushed himself backward into the shadows of the closet. The same closet where the truth had been buried. The same closet where someone had been watching. The same closet now hiding him. He pressed against the wall, breath shallow, heart punching painfully at his ribs. The door opened wider. A figure stepped inside. Not Camilla, not Charles, not a recognizable senior staff member. It was someone younger. One of Camilla's personal aides, anonymous enough to slip in quietly, loyal enough to enter without knocking, trained enough to know when something was wrong. The aide's footsteps were soft, cautious, almost feline. They stopped at the center of the room. Silence expanded, thick and suffocating. William forced himself not to breathe too loudly. Then the aide spoke, barely audible. He's been here. William's pulse spiked. Who had he been speaking to? A radio? A phone? An earpiece? Thin air? William didn't dare peek. But he heard another sound. Faint static. Communication. Someone was listening. Someone was guiding him. The aide continued in a tense whisper. The closet's open. A pause. No, the box isn't here. Another pause. Yes, I'm sure. A longer pause. Then a line that froze William to the bone. He must have seen the letters. Silence. Absolute silence. Not outside. Inside William. The weight of those words felt suffocating. He must have seen the letters. Not. Maybe he opened the box. Not. I think someone tampered with it. Not. Something is missing. He must have seen the letters. The aide didn't sound surprised. He sounded resigned. As if this moment, this exact moment, had been feared for years. As if the unspoken nightmare within palace circles had finally arrived. He moved again, his shoes brushing against the carpet, getting closer to the closet. William clutched the box tighter, his hand instinctively covering the torn diary page. Every muscle in his body pleaded to flee, but his success depended on stillness. Complete, absolute stillness. Then the aide turned abruptly and walked toward Camilla's writing desk. He began rummaging. Quickly, frantically, through drawers, through paperwork, through the small handbag Camilla left on a chair. He lifted files. He shuffled through envelopes. He pulled back the lace curtains and looked outside the window, as if checking for escape routes. Who did he think was here? Not William. He never once used the prince's name. He spoke more like a man searching for a threat than a family member. But then came the line that changed everything about the situation. Lock down the corridor. William's lungs constricted. Lock. Down. The corridor. Those weren't the words of an aide reacting to a minor intrusion. Those were the words of someone responding to an emergency. The aide moved toward the door, speaking softly, urgently. No one in or out. Until she arrives. She. There was only one she in this part of the palace. Camilla. William's pulse thundered in his ears. Camilla was coming. He didn't know if she would arrive angry, defensive, frightened, or calculating, but she was coming. And whoever she was coming with would not want him holding this box. William's mind raced. He couldn't hide in the closet forever. He couldn't walk out empty-handed. He couldn't explain why he was here. He couldn't pretend he had wandered in by accident. Not with the box in his arms. He heard the aide's footsteps approach the closet again. Not directly in front of it, but close enough that William could smell the cologne. A clean, sharp, metallic scent mixed with a hint of antiseptic. The kind of scent often associated with security personnel, not administrative staff. The aide paused, and then something unexpected happened. He spoke. Quietly. Deliberately. Almost regretfully. They warned her this could happen. William's breath hitched. Who warned who? And warned her about what? The aide continued, voice cracking slightly. Not fear. Not anger. Something else. Something that sounded like guilt. I told her we should have destroyed it. William's grip on the box tightened. Destroyed it. Not protect. Not return. Not archive. Destroy. Then the aide added. She wouldn't let me. That sentence landed heavy. Not because it absolved Camilla, but because it revealed something deeper. Camilla knew. She had known for years. She knew the box existed. She knew what was inside. She chose not to destroy it. She chose not to reveal it. She chose not to give it back. She chose to hide it. But why? The aide exhaled sharply. A frustrated, defeated sound. This will change everything. William felt a chill crawl up his spine. Everything. Not something. Not a detail. Not a conversation. Everything. The aide walked toward the door again and froze. Another sound. Footsteps. Not one person. Multiple people. A coordinated approach. Camilla's voice carried first.